Okay, so the latest series of Doctor Who has added some new mysteries, obviously after the very unsuccessful Jodie fan nonsense and really bad British acting. They've returned to the old writers and the old sort of style, which is much better, the stuff that everyone actually liked in Doctor Who. And obviously they started it off with by Regeneration, which kept Matt Smith as a doctor. There are now 3 Matt Smith doctors. Well, technically. The one that got sent to another universe with the first partner of the new series is the Bad Wolf lady. For some reason can't remember her actual name. Then there's the actual one that then eventually got regenerated out, and then there was the Regeneration, which got put back in to that situation where he still exists. Obviously the one that got regenerated out no longer does, but it still counts because it's in its own timeline, and doctors that travel through time, there's a chance that they run across each other. That happens. And then they also made a second TARDIS, so he has his own TARDIS, and then there's the new TARDIS. But yeah, that's not the point. Well, the point is that there's the whole new mystery. Obviously, in the first-ish series, there was the mystery of the Bad Wolf, which they scattered throughout the episodes and gave you little hints every here and there. This series, there's the one who waits, but there's also not so subtle hints towards the Granddaughter, which is like why it was mentioned in one of the first episodes of the series. Why is there a granddaughter that the first ever Doctor had that the new Doctors just don't know whatever happened to her? Obviously, timey wimey, wibbly wobbly is the explanation. Sadly. Because how does he end up with a granddaughter? And the fact is, he does have a daughter, because on that one episode where he's on the war planet, conveniently they were just on a war planet, cosmic coincidences and all that, in the last episodes, at the time of recording this, there's, he got cloned to have a clone daughter, and though she initially died, she did wake up at the end of the episode and nothing ever happened to it. She was blonde, convenient, and then, yes, sure, she's in the future, but there's other TARDISes. There's the 2 Doctor TARDISes now, and then there's also the one that Maisie Williams took off, flying off in her own, gallivanting across the universe in her own sort of TARDIS, so she could also be doing things. She could also be the one that waits, for all we know. And yeah, there's the perfect opportunity for her to get taken back in time, and obviously she would be the Doctor's daughter, but it's not about who the Doctor's daughter is, it's about who the Doctor's granddaughter is. And obviously, Time Lord, she could regenerate, she could be anyone right now, and then in a future life she regenerates. How does that happen? And hair colours and all sorts of things change, even sex and gender can change and everything when you regenerate. So who would that be? They make sure that you don't get to see someone actually die. They keep bringing her on the edge. And again, in this episode, the Doctor makes sure he talks to the dead parent's hologram. I'm also a parent and all that. Even though he isn't, raising a kid or anything. But, he speaks as though I'm a parent. I know exactly what it's like to raise kids, probably from his first ever raising the granddaughter and the great-granddaughter and all that. Because, yeah, he would have experience from that life. And he wouldn't necessarily know what happened to them. Because, as River Song, opposite timelines. They would live on opposite timelines. That story was always meant to end with the Doctor knowing how to save her from where she got saved to the computer, essentially, on the moon. And his first meeting with her, his first meeting with her, from his perspective, she died. And that would be that they were running alternate lives. And from his perspective, her first meeting of him, her first knowing him at all, should be where he would know he would die, and then he would know when he was going to regenerate, and then he would use that regeneration energy, which we've now discovered by generation you can use that energy in two forms. And it was always my thought that he was meant to know, and he did know that he was going to die, but he went on some grand tour of the universe rather than using it to go into that computer and use the regeneration energy to not only regenerate himself, but also regenerate River back to life, and all the others that are saved in the thing, because he would have known at that one opportunity that he was going to die, and that was the only time that he could have possibly known that, unless the new Matt Smith would somehow now know that at some point, and he would be her doctor as well, and maybe it would be the first meeting of her and that re-doctoring of him. And then it would be truly the first ever meeting. Or, maybe she meets him, I don't know, some sort of wibbly wobbly nonsense of, she meets another doctor earlier, but she never really truly knew that, but he knows her but doesn't reveal it, and maybe that's where he's like, oh yeah, well, this is where I regenerate and bring her back. But anyway, it's not about that, it's about Ruby, and they keep showing the snow anytime she's about to die, and yeah, she never truly does die. They gave a big old countdown of this is when she's going to die, but they made sure that the mine would have gone off before then, and they disarmed that, and everyone's saved, and then she gets brought back to life naturally. But, if she ever did get to go to die, it's probably going to be a recurring theme where she keeps almost dying constantly, but not quite, because if she did actually die, she would regenerate, because she is obviously going to be the Doctor's granddaughter. She was just abandoned as a kid, conveniently, and exactly placed, and it's probably going to be shown that the daughter at some point goes and drops her off, and, she is the Doctor's granddaughter. And it will solve the whole mystery, and then eventually she would get placed back into time with the first Doctor. The very first ever one. At least that's my theory. Because, yeah, it seems like she's been set up to be the Doctor's daughter. She is being more forward than a lot of companions, and, more forceful. And, she's been set up to be in the daughtery sort of role, or, as it is, granddaughter. And he is doing, a biological scan on her as well. That was hinted at on one episode, which was the same thing that he was doing to River Song's mom when she was on there. She was getting scanned to see what was going on, and then she was carrying the time baby, and that became River. So, yeah, I think, not so subtly, they're dropping all these hints, and that's what's going on. At least that's my theory. So we'll see if it does pan out, but it seems pretty convenient that she is going to be ending up growing to be, she was a baby, she's in her first ever generation, so of course she would keep the mother's hair, and then, eventually she will regenerate when she eventually does die, and there's probably going to be some old big crying scene over it, and then, miraculously she'll suddenly regenerate, and then it's like, oh, she's the Doctor's granddaughter. But yeah, not so subtly. They're going to keep trying to almost kill her but not kill her, and it's going to keep snowing, and you're going to be like, what's going on with the snow? And then it's going to suddenly turn out, oh, it's just the regeneration energy manifesting as snow, because some nonsense that they'll come up with to explain it. But it was just like, oh yeah, that it's all the regeneration energy that's being held within her that's, not accepted and not known, and then it's manifesting on top of her to become her first ever generation. They'll come up with some nonsense as to why that keeps snowing every time she almost dies, but yeah, I'm pretty certain that that's what they're going with. And it is Moffat, so they do these sorts of things. I don't know, I'll catch you next time. Bye 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 bye.